And welcome back to Capital Tonight. Well, as we mentioned earlier in the show, representatives from the state's racing industry gathered in Albany today to testify at a Senate hearing. Among them was John Signor. He is the president and CEO of the Capital District Regional Off-Track Betting Corporation, and he was kind enough to join me in the studio this evening for a little bit of a recap. Thank you very much for joining me.
No problem, Liz. Anytime.
This is obviously a major industry, very important to the state. It's a little bit under pressure from Andrew Cuomo and also from various different other places, so we'll talk about that. What generally did you say when you gave your testimony today?
Yeah, I mean, we testified, the OTBs testified, the racetracks testified, the horsemen testified, and basically our message was the OTBs are generally doing a pretty good job. I got up and I talked about Capital OTB. We've cut spending 6 years in a row, $6 million. We've reduced our staff from 445 down to 245. We have the lowest salaries in 20 years, corporate salaries in 20 years. So we've done the right things. What has happened is the laws haven't changed with the industry. A lot of the harness tracks and tracks now have VLT operations, so they're making a lot of money with that, millions, tens of millions of dollars, which is a good thing. But the problem is that we're forced to kind of pay those tracks the same amount we were paying prior to them having their VLTs. So, for instance, we're paying Saratoga Harness $2.8 million a year, and we're only making $300,000 on the races. So on one track, we're losing $2.5 million. So
Go ahead.
No, so I'm just saying. So what we said to the Senate, to the committee, was look at that issue and make it more equitable. Let us keep a little more of what we generate, so we can be, remain a viable corporation in upstate New York and generate more money for local governments, help them control taxes.
Did the issue of a consolidation come up?
The issue did come up. And the response to that was, we said, look at the reports that came out in 2010. The state controller did a thorough review of the regional off-track betting corporations and put out a report, an audit in May of 2010. And in that report, there was no discussion whatsoever of mergers or consolidations. They saw what the issues were. They saw what the OTBs were doing to run their operations efficiently, but they also saw the issues that were negatively impacting the OTBs, being payments to the tracks. And one other issue, if I can, is the out-of-state internet sites, which we've talked about before.
We have, yeah.
And it's somewhere between $300 and $500 million is being bet by New York residents with out-of-state, these out-of-state entities. And the problem is, if you bet through us, local government gets money, the breeders get money, and the state gets money. If you bet through these entities, none of those parties, the state, local governments, or breeders, get one penny.
But isn't it a little bit the Wild West? I mean, I know we've talked about that other states are collecting on this, but it's a little bit hard to regulate, isn't it?
It is probably difficult to regulate. Other states do it. Arizona does it. New Jersey, our neighbor, New Jersey does it. We got a letter the other day from the New Jersey Attorney General basically saying you cannot take bets from New Jersey residents at Capital OTB. So it is being done.
And that's on you.
It's
that's
on us.
Your responsibility.
Right. Exactly.
That's
exactly. So, if they don't follow through, then the racing board can go after them. Maybe the Attorney General can go after them. I mean, in our view, we need to protect the New York market. We have a huge market, and we're letting these entities come in and just poach bettors, and it's hurting the racing industry in New York State dramatically, to the point where, as I said, the industry itself in total is probably down $500 million from 5-6 years ago, and it's really all affiliated with the out-of-state internet sites.
But that's another issue, is that also coming up at this hearing today was the question of table games. Now, table games are allowed at the Indian-run casinos. They are not allowed at the racinos, which are not Indian-run. These are what's happening at Saratoga, for example. And already you have Genting, which is the operation that's going to run Aqueduct down in Queens, asking for table games. They haven't even opened their doors yet.
Yeah, I know, exactly. And look, I think from an OTB vantage point, we want the tracks to be successful. We want them to make money and be financially viable into the future. So I think from our vantage point, we would support that. I know Senator Bonasek spoke about that, the chairman of the racing committee. Genting spoke about it. I think we would be supportive of that, to have table games at the racinos. And I think it would be good for New York. He made the point, the Genting, I think Seller was his name, that a lot of people are going down to New Jersey, New Jersey, Atlantic City, or Vegas on weekends. And
well, we're never going to be Vegas. I mean,
no, we're not. But
we don't even have the weather.
But just look at the VLTs. They have generated a ton of money. I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars, not only for the state, but for the privately owned tracks. I mean, there is a lot of money there at these racinos, and I think there would be more with table games. So I think we would support it. Would it be more competition for us? Yes. You know, maybe we could get something in return that would help us. But I think overall we would support it because it would help New York State. Well,
here's part of the problem. I mean, when you talk about OTBs being run well, one of them is gone. Like the entire New York City OTB shut down early December, costing 1,000 and change jobs, and they're gone, still not back. And we're now talking about February here. To make up for the lost revenue, the governor has proposed the surcharge, the 2.75% surcharge on the purses, and everybody's screaming about that. I mean, if you say on one end that you actually want to incentivize racing and support racing, and on the other end you say you're going to tax racing further, aren't you going to just drive racing out of the state?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, I don't know. Looking at that issue, I think the governor is trying to fill a hole at the Racing and Wagering Board. And that's what that tax on purses would do. I think it would bring in over $7 million to help fill a $10 million deficit.
Right.
The other aspect of that is if the governor looked at the out-of-state internet sites and either prohibited those or regulated those, I think it would bring in $5 to $10 million, and that could fill that hole. He wouldn't need to do that. So that's something maybe they can look at. But I think he's trying to keep, the regulatory agency, which is the Racing and Wagering Board, whole, so they can continue to do their function of regulating racing in New York State.
But if, in fact, you do go ahead and go after off-site, off-state bettors, you have to have bodies to do that, and at the same time you're trying to downsize the government. It doesn't necessarily make it any easier if you're adding more jobs and more responsibility to the entity that's already existing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, in my view, and I testified today, that there are really a few simple things that could be done to help racing, and it's take some action on the out-of-state internet sites. It's reduce some of the payments we make to the harness tracks. We pay $2.8 million, we only make $300,000 on the races. Find some equity there.
For you, OTB, you're talking about.
For OTB, and I think it would help everybody. The out-of-state internet sites is going to help everybody, because what happens is people go to the tracks and they're on the phone calling their bets to out-of-state. If they can't do that, they're at the track. They have to bet at the track, and that's what they should have to do. And the third thing is the OTBs have to do a better job and find a way to do shared services, which is internet, phones, marketing. We're looking at an internet TV station that we want to do. So we really have to be a lot more aggressive from the OTB end. But I think there's a few things that could be done that would strengthen the industry and make it, I don't know if it'll flourish going forward, but make it just financially stronger going forward.
Well, of course, obviously, we're going to be talking about this a lot more because it is an industry that now is really dominating all of the area that we're talking about. So I want to thank you, John Signor, for coming in.
Anytime, Liz. Thanks.